Everything you need to know about me is on the screen already, so there's nothing left to say. I'm Brian Dunning. I do the podcast Skeptoid. It's been one of the top science podcasts in iTunes for since the beginning of 2007. Kind of in one night, it went from the last pages to the front page, and it went from 13,000 listeners to 40,000 listeners overnight, just as soon as it went on the front page of the science section. And I guess now it's up to about 135,000 per week. And that's, the way I count, that's unique IP addresses downloading one or more episodes. And everyone counts them differently, so what was that funny noise? It's a dog. I think it's a dog. Well, the show is called Sounds from Beyond, so that was a sound from beyond the room. No, the dog's fun. Leave the dog alone. In fact, bring him out. Maybe he'll do some tricks for us. That's always more fun than PowerPoint. Okay, anyway, so my show. We're doing a talk. Skeptoid is about pop culture phenomena, things that people generally believe that either aren't true or that there's a more interesting truth behind them. Fact is often more interesting than fiction, and when you look at anything, any of these urban legends, things in pop culture that are promoted on television or whatever, and you dig into the facts, you almost always find something that's more interesting, more engaging than the popular, paranormal or pop explanation, whatever it might be. So every show I deal with one particular subject. The shows are short, they're 10 to 12 minutes long, so it's an easy little sound bite to grab. And a lot of them are about sounds, obviously, since it's an audio podcast, and so I've collected a lot of these examples and put them into this presentation, Sounds from Beyond. And if I had a little echo button, I'd push it and sound really cool. So let's get started. Sounds from Beyond. There's my Sounds from Beyond. That's really loud. Whoops. This is a beta test. Pay no attention. I first got interested in this when I was in high school. I lived in Orinda, just across the bay over here, and we lived in a house that was built on landfill. There was this big ditch that had a creek in it, and at the bottom of the creek, they'd bulldozed in a whole bunch of dirt and debris, and they built a couple of houses on it. And these houses were really cheaply built, and the land was always shifting. We had slides. And so the houses were always kind of creaking and everything was not quite straight. And my bedroom was way up in the corner of the room, of the house. My head was like 4 feet away from this one layer of thin plywood ceiling that was the whole roof of the house. There was no insulation or anything. And right where I slept, my head was in the absolute corner. There was a weird creaking that would sound inside the wall. Sometimes it would sound like a mechanical creak, like wood or metal or something, or a hinge. Sometimes it would sound exactly like a cat or a baby or some kind of animal. This weird, and it would repeat itself at even intervals all night long and all day long sometimes during the day. And I could never figure out what it was. And it always creeped me out. I was a teenager, and at night it would be quite scary for me sometimes. So one summer day, I vowed that I was going to figure out what the hell this sound was. Can I say hell? Sorry. Does that offend anyone?
After Dan Savage yesterday.
Okay. Will do. Okay. Where was I? Did I start? I planned this big assault to find out what the sound was. I got a ladder. I climbed up onto the roof of the house. I inspected the whole sides of the house where there's these little metal hingy flaps for the air conditioning, I guess. Anything that could possibly move or bend or creak, I was pushing and pulling and prodding under the house, everywhere. And I couldn't find any cause of the mysterious sound in the wall. And to this day, it's an unsolved mystery for me. But it's something that kind of stuck with me, and it got me interested in trying to solve mysteries. And mine is not the only one. There's plenty of sounds in the wall in nature. This is one that if you pay attention to CNN or newspapers at all, you may have heard this. It's called the Bloop. You can use Google, it's a nice website, and you can Google the Bloop. Can I say Google as if it's a verb, or is that like verboten here? Will the lawyers come in and beat me? So you can Google for the Bloop. And what you'll always find is this article that uses much of the same languages. The exact same sentences copied and pasted between various news articles and blogs. And they say that scientists have determined that it must be an unknown animal, some kind of a sea monster. Here's what it sounds like. What you're looking at here, obviously, is a spectrogram, for those who don't know. You have time along the x-axis, and the y-axis is frequency. And so you're hearing the big bloop. That second stroke is just kind of a burst of static. I'll play it one more time. So it's that bloop sound. This was recorded in the South Pacific Ocean in 1997. It was extremely loud. It was heard thousands of miles in different directions. It was recorded on a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration not sonogram. What do you call them? Sonar under the water, the sonar arrays, the things sitting on the bottom that were supposed to listen for undersea earthquakes and movement along the Pacific Plate. And it's unsolved. NOAA has no explanation for what this sound is. It's sped up 16 times, so when you actually heard it, it was subsonic. You would have had to listen to you'd have to look at the spectrogram to tell that there was any sound there, and when they played it back sped up, that's what it sounded like. So this is widely promoted as evidence of a sea monster, because they say, well, it has the same audio profile looking at the spectrogram as living creatures like whales. Well, it doesn't. I did a whole episode on it. If you want to look up the bloop on Skeptoid.com, right there, you'll see a whole bunch of other comparative sounds, actual whales and sounds that actually do come from the sea, volcanoes, earthquakes, anything you can think of that it might be. And you can see that it doesn't look remotely like them. This is another sound, in fact, that's unsolved that I think sounds a lot scarier. I'll play this one. It actually sounds a lot more like a whale, but it doesn't look anything like a whale. And that one is called Julia. They just gave it a name. And it's officially classified as unsolved. There are no scientists who have decided that these must be sea monsters. That's strictly the ornamentation added to the story by a reporter. Here's one that has a really cool sound, a really cool name. It's called the train. Sounds like a train whistle, doesn't it? Usually when I do this, it's roughly synchronized with the train whistle. But not only do you hear the high frequency sound, but you see those low frequency bands also. Those are also part of the sound, and they're also unexplained. This one is called the Slowdown. What do you think that might be? Obviously, the thing that comes to mind is an engine slowing down, a submarine or a ship or something like that. It's not. Those sound very different. They look very different on a spectrogram. So this is also officially unsolved. Here's one called the upsweep. These are all sped up 16 times. These are all subsonic. Sounds like a police siren or something. Nobody has any idea what this could be. There's a whole giant library of these at NOAA. They're really quite cool. Whoops. So here's another sound in the wall, if you were, that's from a completely different part of the world. And I want to see if you can guess what this might be. And if you've already seen this presentation, don't shout it out, you. Call out any guesses you have. Not bees, not a jet engine. Fan? No, not a fan. It's not mechanical. Not a didgeridoo. I guess that would be mechanical. Here is a hint. I apologize for the guy wearing Speedos. It is sand squeaking. This is the singing sands. These are the Eureka Dunes in Death Valley. There's a number of places in the world where the sand sings, given the right conditions. Sand dunes, they're not all dry sand. Part of the reason that they stay in pretty much the same place year after year is that 18 to 24 inches below the surface, they become almost solid. Either it's wet sand or it's hardened rock or dirt. And given the right temperature and humidity and wind, the sand will actually make that noise. And you can actually hear it. That's an audible recording. It's not sped up. The volume is about what it would sound like if you were there in person. And although this is partly understood, it's not completely understood how and why this happens. So that's just a really interesting area of research. The complexities involved in what's causing that sound are really something pretty cool. And there's other sounds that don't turn out to be scary when we learn what they are. This is one. You can guess from the picture that this is a pulsar. This one is going 1.4 times a second. Now, when we first heard this, we thought that it had to be an intelligent signal because it sounds so regular and so perfect. And it's absolutely right on. It never changes. So this was called the LGM signal for a long time, little green men. We thought it was aliens until we learned what pulsars were. Pulsars, as you may know, are when a star goes supernova, it collapses. And all of that rotational inertia is preserved. And as it collapses down into a neutron star, it's spinning. So all the spin that the sun had is greatly accelerated, like a figure skater bringing in her arms. And so it's spinning quite fast. And it shoots out this jet of X-rays and gamma rays, which is also not completely understood how or why they shoot out these jets. But each time that jet spins by us, and if we're on the same plane, we hear a click like that. And that's not the only pulsar that there are. There's others that spin faster. This is one in the Vela. That's awfully loud. That one's going 11 times a second, and this one exploded 10,000 years ago, so people probably saw it. Here's one that people definitely saw. This happened in 1054 AD. It's going even faster. It's 30 times a second, and this is the Crab pulsar in the center of the Crab Nebula. Now, I want you to stop for a second and reflect on what you're hearing. That is a body in space spinning that fast. It's about the size of Earth, and it's spinning that fast. If you were up next to that thing in a spaceship, watching something that size moving that fast, it really kind of boggles the mind. Or how about 174 times a second? Guaranteed to be the most annoying presentation you'll hear. Last one I'm going to play for you is the second fastest pulsar known. The surface of this body is moving 1/7 the speed of light as it rotates. And we all know all of that just by listening to the sound and analyzing the sound that we heard. Now, some sounds are not quite as useful as evidence in solving a mystery. Some sounds, we don't know where they came from. We're not sure of their provenance. They're just presented to us and somebody tells us a story of where they heard the sound and where they recorded it. And you might get a sound like this. Anyone want to guess what that's alleged to be? It's Bigfoot. Here's another Bigfoot recording. Now you want it? What's that?
That sounds like a dog.
Sounds like a dog? I don't know what it sounds like. The reason we know that it's Bigfoot is because it's on an album titled The Bigfoot Recordings. And the reason we can rely on that is because they were analyzed by a linguist, quote unquote. The linguist's, her professional background is that she plays the flute and she speaks several languages. Therefore, it's Bigfoot. And if that's not enough science credibility for you, the recording is narrated by Jonathan Frakes from Star Trek: The Next Generation. It can only be Bigfoot. So I'll say just a little bit about why I say that these sounds are useless as evidence. Why we can't just listen to that and say, well, somebody says they recorded it at such and such a place and at such and such a time, and they don't know what it is, and the linguist says that it's Bigfoot, so therefore it's Bigfoot. Why do we dismiss that? You've probably all heard the statement that that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. It's not necessarily as glib as that. When something has no provenance, when something is an anecdote like that, we can't test it. We can't verify it. And it's as simple as that, really. We're not simply dismissing it. We have good reason because we cannot test it. We don't actually know where it was recorded, when it was recorded, under what circumstances, where the tape has been all these years. It's interesting, and if somebody tells us, I recorded Bigfoot at this place and at this time, that can suggest directions for us to go research. We can then send, a real team to go and listen and see if anything's going on and document it properly. But as far as evidence itself, it doesn't qualify yet. Anecdotal evidence. So some sounds, however, do have a very useful provenance that does allow us to solve the mystery. If you watch any of the pseudo-history channels or the pseudoscience channels on TV, you may have seen UFO shows. In fact, I bet you have. One of the UFO stories you might have been told is the case of the Rendlesham Forest Ufo. This is one that happened in the UK at an Air Force base inside the UK in 1980. What happened was a bunch of young US airmen saw some flashing lights out through the trees. They went running out through the trees to track them down and see what it was. They initially thought a plane had crashed. And so they were following the flashing lights, and later their story grew into what's now told on the TV shows. But at the time, all they reported was seeing flashing lights and chasing them down. So they went back to the base and they got their colonel, Colonel Halt, and he came back with an audio recorder. And he made an officially documented audio recording of their chase through the trees following the blinking light. And here's a few seconds from that audio recording.
You just saw a light there. Where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flash back there, sir. There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir. So can I get some? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light.
Now you see that object that it's circled in yellow up in the corner of this picture. This is actually the view from the forest. If you went all the way through the forest where these guys were and came out of the trees, this is what you would see. That is the Orford Ness Lighthouse. The constables showed up because the Air Force Base, they called the local constables and said, hey, we think we've got a crashed plane or some accident or something. They came out, wrote in their report, these guys saw the lighthouse, and they left. And that's obviously evidence of a government conspiracy that they left with no further investigation. So the Orford Ness Lighthouse has a period of exactly 5 seconds. Every lighthouse has a unique period, the time between each blink. That's how sailors can identify which lighthouse they're looking at. So with a 5-second beep overlaid on top of this recording, this is what it sounds like.
You just saw a light there. Where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flash back there, sir. There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it?
So we have a very reliable recording that solved the mystery for us very reliably. That's the value of sounds. So sometimes the sounds are not always clues that help us solve mysteries. Sometimes the sounds are the mysteries themselves. You're looking at a Royal Air Force base on the island of Akrotiri in Cyprus. And shortwave radio enthusiasts have, for about 20 years, 25 years, they've been hearing a radio broadcast on a particular frequency at the same time of day every single day. And this is what it sounds like. 39715. And they triangulated it to this RAF base. And so the conspiracy theories started flying. These are called numbers stations. If you Google the internets, you will find all sorts of stories about the numbers stations and conspiracy theories about what they are. Sometimes people suggest plausible explanations, like, well, there's buoys in the ocean transmitting weather data and things like this. But those don't use a voice recording on shortwave. So it must be governments transmitting evil instructions to their evil spies. Here's another one that interestingly comes from inside the White Sands Missile Base in the United States. Followed by the same strings of 5 numbers repeating over and over again. And this one actually rotates frequencies. Plays the same time of day on the same frequency every single day, stepping up a few frequencies each time. It turns out in this case that the conspiracy theory explanation is the true one. There's something that happened on 9/11 in the Pentagon that may have been lost in the news for other reasons. A woman was arrested in the Pentagon on 9/11 and thrown in jail for listening to this numbers station coming out of Cuba.
Atención, 3, 8, 9, 5, 9, 0, 4, 4, 7, 3, 3, 8, 9, 5, 9.
There was also another group of spies called the WASP network of spies that were arrested in 1998 and imprisoned for doing exactly the same thing. They were listening to this radio station every day. They were typing these groups of 5 numbers into their laptop computer, and a program was decrypting it and getting their evil instructions from the evil Cuban government. So if you know anything about cryptography, you'll know that it's common for codes to be expressed as strings of 5 digits. And that's exactly what the number stations turned out to be. We have the RAF one on Cyprus. We have the White Sands Missile Range called Yosemite Sam. And there are dozens of these coming from all over the world. But just because some of the sounds turn out to be conspiracy theories being true, it doesn't mean that they all are. I'm sure you've all heard rock music played backwards and how some people think that there's messages encoded in that. Nothing new there. Just as an example, listen to Jim Morrison singing the phrase, "Treasures there," from Break On Through.
Treasures there.
And if you play it backwards, he says, "I am Satan." Notice that I primed you. First I told you what he was going to say, and then I played it for you, so that you're guaranteed to have heard what I wanted you to hear. If you hadn't been primed, you would have heard him say this. I am Sata Schneigel. It's much less interesting when it's not carefully edited and someone is not looking for a specific string of text. So there's a subculture of people who call this backmasking. And their theory is that our brains work in such a way that it deliberately chooses words which, when played backwards, will say what we actually mean. Backmasking. Here's another example of that. Here's a guy giving some little talk.
More energy and money and effort.
And what he really means is, "You're frightened, lean on me."
You're fighting, lean on me.
And again, without the careful editing.
You're fighting, lean on me, journey home.
Lean on me, journey home. And if backmasking is true, then Jim Morrison, actually his purpose in life is to convince us that he is Sata Schneigel. These sounds don't have to be played backwards. Sometimes they can be played just forward, just naturally, and they say something that was not intended. Listen to this toy. What was that? Islam is the light? Oh my God, how horrific! Let's hear that again. Islam is the light. Well, there was so much outrage over this toy saying Islam is the light that Fisher-Price actually had to pull this doll off the market and re-release it with a different sound of baby giggling. So here's a sound that I recorded myself. You probably all know Mount Diablo across the bay, and on the back side is the Black Diamond Mine. And at the Black Diamond Mine, there's a cemetery that's been there for, I'm not sure how long, 100 years or so. A lot of the graves are very old, and I actually recorded this myself in 2003. Listen to this. I'm going to tell you more about that a little bit later, but just remember that I played something that sounded kind of silly. A lot of times these can just be plain fun. We can learn a little bit of science from them, but they're also fun. This is a guy who took recorded voice, an actual recording of somebody actually speaking, separated it into 6 frequencies, and played back the 6 frequencies, each one separately resonated as noise. Pink noise? Is that pink noise or white noise? Someone here has to know that. You're all smart, they told me. Pink? Okay. So I'm gonna tell you again. I'm gonna prime you what this. No, I won't. I won't prime you. I'll make you listen to it first. Okay, that was an actual voice. Someone actually said that. But what you're hearing is not processed speech from him. It's a computer representation making up a new sound, simulating his speech with these 5 bands of noise. Listen to it one more time and see if you can tell what he says. Let me turn it up a bit. Anyone? Satan says the truth is in the park. No. It was a sunny day and the children were going to the park. You hear it now? Because you've been primed. You've been told what it says, so you can't not hear it. Here's another way of doing the same thing, except the voices were reproduced using a single sine wave. So if you were to look at the frequency of this, you'd just see one little sine wave going like this. Much simplified. There's no traditional speech cues in this. There are no consonants, for example. And yet you can still understand what it says to some degree. Here's the same sentence. Isn't that cool? You can hear it saying, it was a sunny day and the children were going to park. Understanding speech without traditional speech cues. Here's another one. See if you can tell what this says. He was sitting at his desk in his office. Listen to this. Museum. A lot of people hear museum. Let's see if I can go back and play it again. Suddenly it sounds very obvious, doesn't it? You can't not hear it. Here's one saying, the man read the newspaper at lunchtime. One more. The owl was kept in a cage at the zoo? Very close. It's the camel was kept in a cage at the zoo. It gets easier. Once you understand this, your brain adapts fairly quickly, and it suddenly becomes much easier to understand. But what's important is note that when I primed you, it was really obvious to tell what it says. And I want you to pay attention the next time you watch a ghost show on television, where they have an electronic voice phenomenon that they supposedly recorded that they say must be a ghost. They will always, always prime you first with what they want you to think it says before they play the sound for you. Notice that. Thanks to Matt Davis at Cambridge who did this work. So here's a cool thing. No question about what it's saying. I put the text up here on the screen for you so you can read along. I want you to see if you can tell what is making this speech. Shout out some guesses. Piano. Most people got it.
Alles klar? Wohl kaum, das lässt sich aber ganz einfach ändern.
Isn't that something? Frequencies are frequencies, and sound is sound. So even though a piano is so different from how our vocal cords work, we can still understand what it says. See if you can guess this musical instrument. It's loud and annoying, so I'll skip. Here's the solution. This is the Renault V10 Formula One engine from a few years ago, obviously being computer controlled. I just like that last part. Click, click. Okay, One more mystery, guess the musical instrument. Or guess the game that it's from. That answer is acceptable as well. Sounds kind of sparky, doesn't it? Or kind of farty, one or the other. Tesla coils. 2 Tesla coils, so it's polyphonic. In December of 2009, I spoke at the Chaos Computer Conference in Berlin. And I was coming outside, I was leaving the conference center at like 3 a.m. It's a 24-hour conference. I go out the doors, it was December in Berlin, so it was insanely cold, I have no idea. And I almost stepped into one of these. Between 2 notes, it's silent and there's no flash, so you don't see anything. And this is like just during a rest in the music that I happened to come along and open the door and step out here. Nearly walked into the thing just as it started playing another note. It was like that far from my face. Scared the living crap out of me, and I probably almost died. I don't know. Here's a guy that made one in his bedroom just for fun. Yeah, you're cool, dude. Make a real YouTube video. Think how much better this would be if his cat had come in while he's doing that. All right. Sometimes the sounds solve mysteries even when no sound was heard. For example, when a sound is subsonic. This gentleman right here is Vic Tandy. He's passed away now, but he's relatively famous for some work that he did during the last years of his life. It started in 1980. He was working in a lab in a basement in the UK, and he kept seeing a blob in his peripheral vision, and he'd turn, and there wouldn't be anything there. He'd start working again, he'd see the blob, and he'd turn, and there wouldn't be anything there. And he told his coworkers that, and they said, "Oh yeah, that lab's haunted." He goes, "Okay." So the next day, he brings in his fencing foil. He was a fencing enthusiast, so he brought his foil into the lab. That's company time theft, because I'm sure that's not what his research was supposed to be. He puts his foil in a vise, and he's about to unscrew it or do something to it, and the foil starts doing this. It starts oscillating all on its own. And he said, "Aha, there must be some low-frequency sound that I can't hear." And he got a hold of some sound testing equipment, and he found out that indeed there was 19 hertz at a pretty substantial amplitude. This is his actual tracing of what he recorded in that lab, starting at 5, 10, 15, 20 hertz. You can see that giant peak just at about 19 hertz. He measured the room and found out that the room was exactly half the length of a 19 hertz wavelength, which is some 30-something feet, I believe. And the lab was half of that. So he thought, that's interesting. And he was wondering if maybe that could account for the anomaly in his vision as well. Well, that's not quite so far-fetched, because NASA also did some of these tests for the same thing. A Saturn V is damn loud, and it might have some effect on astronauts' ability to perform. And so NASA, to be responsible, they had to do some tests and see if, well, I want to say people, but they used animals, how that would affect their vision. They put dogs in chairs, strapped them in chairs, they shook the chairs, they shook the dogs' bodies, and they shook the dogs' heads, and tried to see the effect on the dog's vision, how it would be able to track its vision. They did the same thing with people when the dogs didn't die. And they found this. Vision was affected at, look at that frequency where the highest peak is. It's just about the same place, almost 19 hertz. And it turns out that this approximately 19 hertz, it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, is the resonant frequency of your eyeball. And you can test that by, if you ping a wine glass, the note that it produces, that's its resonant frequency. So if you were to do that to your eyeball, I'm not going to try it by way of demonstration, but that's the sound of the thump that would make. 19 hertz, it's subsonic, so you wouldn't hear it, but that's the resonant frequency of an eyeball. So NASA found that your vision is affected at 19 hertz, and this guy did find that he saw a blurb in his peripheral vision. So other people have tried following that up to see if maybe this explains some cases of hauntings, because we have infrasound throughout the world. In Vic Tandy's case, he found it was caused by a fan, an air conditioning fan that had been installed. The lab was either positively pressurized or negatively pressurized, and it was this particular fan that kept the air pressure where it was supposed to be. That once they shut it off, that frequency dropped away. So my friend Richard Wiseman, who's an experimental psychologist in the UK, in 2002, he did an experiment with some others. They took what you see here, it's basically some big giant organ pipes. These things make 19 hertz, subsonic frequency. And they got 1,750 people, a fairly large size sample, in different groups. They put them into a theater, a music hall, and they played 4 pieces of music, the same 4 pieces of music for all the people. They randomly, they did a random test where some of the groups got infrasound in the background along with the music. And then they asked everyone if they were emotionally affected by the music. And they found a statistically significant 22% of the people were more emotionally affected when this subsonic, inaudible ultrasound, infrasound, was present. So Tandy spent the rest of his career basically investigating haunted sites throughout the UK and seeing if he could find infrasound and turning it off. So that was pretty cool. And the lesson that we learned from all this is pretty simple. Doing the work and finding the real answers is always more interesting than accepting the popular explanation, stopping at, oh, the lab is haunted, that's all there is to it. If you actually do the work, you're always going to learn something better, and you're always going to learn something interesting. So, I told you that I would come back to the mysterious sound that I recorded in the cemetery. Pretty terrifying. I can see that some of you look kind of alarmed. If you need to leave, feel free. You're probably not going to be surprised that when you play it backwards, it sounds like this.
This is nonsense.
Okay, well that's the end of the talk. We're going to do some Q&A. If we have time, do we have time? Yeah. Okay. And while you're thinking of your very interesting questions, and I guess we can also take questions from the remote sites, yes? And the mysterious, raptured voice from above will read the questions for us if we have them. A couple of announcements. One that I told you I'd forget, which was what?
We're going to lunch after this.
We're going to lunch after this if anyone wants to join us. That's lots of fun. This is allegedly an authors at Google talk, right? Not a podcasters at Google. So I quickly threw together a book. Every 50 episodes of the podcast, well, the best 50 episodes, they go into a book. So this is volume 3. Volume 4 and 5 should be coming out later this year. This one's called Pirates, Pyramids, and Papyrus, available on Amazon.com. And basically, these are all 50 stories that you've heard in pop culture. Most people will have heard of most of these, and you get a great explanation on any of them. If you've got any people in your family who have strange beliefs or who believe one of these stories that they heard on Oprah or whatever, you can almost certainly find the answer in this book or one of its predecessors. So I recommend it. It's fun, and I make money every time you buy one, so I recommend it a second time. And oh, look, there's my Twitter name on the screen. Or do you guys not like Twitter because it's not Google? You don't own that yet, do you? No? Okay. All right, Q&As. Any questions about this or any other mysterious subjects that I may or may not have covered yet? Blank stares. I was at Pixar yesterday. Oh, go ahead.
When you have people talk to you about like pseudoscience or quackery, in like just general discussion, what is your theory of engaging with those people? Like friends, loved ones, and stuff? Okay,
that's a very common question. She asked, I'm repeating the question, that was the other thing I was going to forget. She's asking, when I'm engaging in conversation with people and they have some, how did you phrase it? They have some pseudoscience belief, how do I engage them in such a way without them starting a fight or me starting a fight and losing them as a friend, coworker, colleague, whatever they are? It's a very common question and it's a very common problem, and it's a problem because people do it when they shouldn't. I simply don't do it. I almost never go up to someone and say, you're wearing the power balance bracelet, that's fake. I don't do that. I don't go up and I don't criticize people who are going to church on Sunday, whatever it is that they're doing. I have no problem with it at all. Unless they're on their deathbed dying of cancer and they're going to be dead in the next 24 hours unless they go to a doctor, then I might say something. Otherwise, I say, don't start an argument. And if you want to bring someone over to your way of thinking, don't start by attacking their cherished sacred cow. Start with something where you have common ground. I know it's self-serving, but I always say go to Skeptoid and find a podcast episode on something that you know you're both going to agree with, because a lot of them are really interesting. Some of these old historical cases, they don't challenge anyone's beliefs, but everyone has fun learning about them. And you get people interested in this material, and they want more, and they'll start cutting their way in closer and closer to your way of thinking sooner or later. So don't create a problem. Don't put friendships on the line because you have the opportunity to not have a fight and to eventually win them over with honey, not vinegar. Yes, sir?
Well, following on to that, aside from specific views that people have that seem to be nonsense, there's this widespread feeling that skepticism and critical thinking has just kind of moved.
Yes. Yes, he's pointing out that skepticism and critical thinking has a negative reputation for being basically an inherently negative process, and that's absolutely true. I couldn't agree with you more. I hate the word skeptic and skepticism. I wish I hadn't called my podcast Skeptoid. I'd call it anything else if I could, because that doubles my work. First, people hear the word skeptic and they go, oh, you're one of those people that thinks 9/11 was a government conspiracy. No. So you have to educate them on what you consider skepticism to be, which is supposed to be a positive process of finding more information and finding the truth. But that's not the way that it happens. You've got all these people like Richard Dawkins right now writing these books that are inflammatory as hell. Can I say hell? I don't think that's the way to go about it. I don't think being inherently negative is positive. And that's why what I try to do on my show, and the early shows I was not as successful at this, but what I try to do now is I try to only be positive. I don't set out to debunk, quote unquote, anything, because that's simply inherently negative, and that doesn't do anybody any good. Because there is good science, there is interesting information behind almost every story, and if you focus on that, then you've got something that everyone can enjoy and that everyone can appreciate. So you make an important point that skepticism is often negative and harmful and doesn't do anyone any good, and I agree with you completely. Any questions from the mysterious voice in the heavens? Maybe they were all raptured already. Okay.
No, that's tomorrow.
Well, I started to say that I was at Pixar yesterday and giving talks in the Bay Area. Sorry to offend anyone, but Bay Area is basically the center of alternative everything, and there's a lot of, shall we say, not quite scientific beliefs that are very popular up here. And you know, Pixar, it's supposed to be a room full of all smart people, and someone asked a question about some news story that had been published. And I pointed out that news stories, when they report MIT or Harvard has just published a study in which this was found or that was found, what it almost always is the university's PR department sending out a press release about some 17-year-old undergrad who did something completely flawed and faulty, but it's interesting news, and so they'll send out a press release about it. Doesn't mean that Harvard did a study, but it does mean that Harvard did a study because some student did something. And that's exactly how the whole bottled water scare got started. This is what I was saying at Pixar yesterday, and as soon as I said bottled water, I saw the radar going up. People in the audience were getting pissed off like this. What happened at the University of Idaho was this student had, he was doing a test on seeing if bottled water leached evil toxic chemicals, the bottle, if it leached evil toxic chemicals into the water and makes you die from drinking it. And so what he found that this particular brand of plastic bottles leaked DEHA into the water. And that got into the news. University sent out a press release, as they always do, and that got into the news, and it went national, and it's been a common belief ever since. That bottle didn't even have DEHA in it. It was from the lab equipment he was using, the plastic tubes that the water flowed between the bottle and his test equipment. So I don't know if he got an F or whatever, but his study was completely flawed, and by no way would it be accurate to say the University of Idaho has concluded this or that. So I started telling the same story at Pixar yesterday, and I could tell that everyone in the room wanted to fight with me because I just attacked their sacred cow, because evil plastic bottles, that's that's the beginning and end of government conspiracy and the evil corporations out to kill us all with their toxins. So I went into another point that I often make, and that's that every substance in the world is both poisonous and safe. There's no dividing line between what's a poison and what's not. It's what concentration of it will kill you. Water will kill you at a concentration. Oxygen will kill you at a certain concentration. One of the most toxic substances known is plutonium. How much plutonium do you think you have in you right now? The average person has 20 million atoms of plutonium in their body. Why doesn't it kill you? Because it's a safe level. That's a safe level of plutonium. There's a safe level of BPA. There's a safe level of DEHA. Plastic water bottles do contain BPA in many cases, well below safe levels. Nevertheless, it's a really hard thing for people to accept, that something so deeply ingrained that they've been told this is poisonous and it's an evil corporate conspiracy to kill you because the lawsuits cost less than continuing to use BPA. People just do not want to accept science that contradicts with their pre-existing beliefs. So I could tell that when I made this point at Pixar, it didn't sway everyone in the room, but watching the audience reactions, I could tell a lot of people were getting pissed off when I mentioned plastic water bottles, and then I could see them going, yeah, okay, I can accept that. About half of them. The other half chased me out of the building with pitchforks and torches shortly thereafter. Yes, sir?
Why do you think the reporting around food in particular, and particularly with respect to diet, why do you think that pseudoscience is so much more widespread and respected by people than most other things?
Basically, why are all the food pseudosciences and food-related conspiracy theories so popular? Aspartame, high fructose corn syrup, all of these evil toxic chemicals. Why McDonald's? People love to bash fast food. That's been one of the most popular subjects in Hollywood for 10 years. Why are these pseudosciences, if you will, so popular? And it's because they're popular. It's because it's really popular right now. It's just a social trend. Foodieism, is that a word? Foodieism? Google that, somebody. That's not funny, don't laugh. That was an obvious joke. That wasn't a good joke. Because it's simply popular, and it's a really easy sell. Almost all of the food-related pseudosciences are centered on the whole all-natural fallacy. If something is all-natural, it's therefore healthy. If anything has chemicals in it, it's immoral and evil. And that's related to so many other popular myths. The big pharma conspiracy is another one. Why don't we all use herbs and everything? All these drugs that the evil big pharma companies are always pushing on us, they're all developed by humans, therefore they're immoral. But you see, almost all drugs are developed from natural substances. That's how we find them to begin with. I have two friends who are microbiologists at the Scripps Institute in San Diego. All they do, their entire careers, they're going to do nothing but pick through these little tiny pieces of seaweed in this one little aquarium that they have in their basement. And they're just going to test these compounds that they find in the seaweed for some kind of a compound that's going to have some effect, positive as a drug on some disease. They're probably going to work their entire careers, and they're probably going to find nothing at all. It takes that much work for us to finally find one drug in nature that works. It takes a lot of time, costs a hell of a lot of money. Can I say hell? I think we've established that. And when we do find one, we find ways that we can mass produce it, because taking one molecule out of a piece of seaweed is not very efficient. We have to be able to mass produce it in volume. It has to be purified. We have to be able to know what the dose is. So the whole big pharma process, largely, once you know about it, once you have friends who are microbiologists working in the industry and you ask them, you find out how they do their job, it really is all about nature and all about finding things that are positive in nature and finding out how we can benefit from them. And then rather than tearing down the rainforest to get every single molecule that we need, how can we mass produce it? How can we synthesize it? How can we produce it in volume? So I don't hold to the all-natural fallacies at all. I mean, you've all heard the argument, what are some other all-natural compounds? Hemlock, box jellyfish neurotoxin, poison oak. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Mercury. How many things in nature are bad for us? A lot. Any other questions? Was that a scratch of the head? Yes, the question was, yes, it was a scratch of the head. How are we on time? Are we done? Yeah, we're close. We have 7 minutes yet. Yes, go ahead.
We were talking about concentrations of things in the body. You got any particular remarks to make about homeopathy?
Homeopathy. Any remarks about homeopathy? I'll repeat the Twitter we just said today. The ocean is now, what was it? The ocean is now a homeopathic cure for terrorism. Love that. Homeopathy is one of those things that it's so stupid that you can't believe it's actually a problem. But if you go into a drugstore now, you'll start to see homeopathic compounds everywhere. It is really, really growing because these companies have discovered we can sell no product at all for just as much money as we were selling product before. It's based on the concept of dilution, although that's not really accurate because there is none of the original compound in it at all. If there is any, it is not homeopathy by definition if you understand what homeopathy actually is. A typical dilution is 30C, 30 and then Roman numeral C. That's 100 to the 30th power, 1 followed by 60 zeros. That's equivalent to 1 atom in a sphere of water the size of the Earth's orbit. And you take one tiny little bit of that, put it in a sugar pill, and how likely is it that there's going to be any of that original compound? It's impossible. It's well beyond what we consider to be chemically pure, which is related to Avogadro's number, 6 times 10 to the 23rd power. But it doesn't even stop there, because a sugar pill is dry. There is none of the water left in it. None of the magic water is even in the bottle. It's sugar pills. It doesn't even contain the magical water that they say homeopathy is all about. So it's one fallacy compounded on top of another fallacy, compounded on top of another fallacy. It's just stupid. And if you look at the labeling on a homeopathic product, next time you're in a drugstore, find one and check it out. And under active ingredients, it'll say it's got, you know, herb of root or whatever the hell it is. Can I say hell? And it'll say that it'll list that under active ingredients. So you might argue with me, how can you say there's none of it in here? It's listed under the ingredients, but you'll notice that the concentration is listed as a homeopathic dilution, which means by definition there is nothing in there. And then it'll say inactive ingredients, and that's where we get the sucrose and lactose is what the sugar pills are made of. That's all that they are. So homeopathy is, as stupid as it is, it's becoming a real problem because drug companies, most supplement companies are owned by the major drug companies because they're so much more profitable. They're just starting to sell, Zicam was one of the first. Zicam used to sell a regular cold remedy containing conventional cold remedy stuff in it. And then they came out with another product which in very small letters said homeopathic on it, sold for exactly the same price. They no longer make the original product at all anymore. They're literally selling no product at all for just as much money. And people are happy to buy it simply because they don't understand that.
Yes, it's kind of related to the placebo effect, right?
The placebo effect, yeah, the placebo effect is often what people describe homeopathy as. I'm not convinced that it is the placebo effect so much as it is confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is when you notice things that confirm your existing beliefs and you ignore or just skip over, or your brain just dismisses things that don't agree with your pre-existing beliefs. And for years, I took vitamin C whenever I got sick. Now, you can search the medical literature all day long and you will find nothing but studies determining that vitamin C does nothing for a cold. It does not reduce the severity, it does not prevent it. And yet we all take vitamin C whenever we get sick or to prevent ourselves from getting sick. And I was taking it as recently as a couple of years ago, even after I'd done episodes about vitamin megadosing and all this stuff, and I knew what the medical science was. And I still kept taking it just because I'd been doing it my whole life, and it was so hard for me to let go of that. But confirmation bias is why I kept taking it. I'd get sick, I'd take a whole bunch of vitamin C, and guess what would happen? I'd get better. That vitamin C must have worked. That's not an example of the placebo effect so much as it is confirmation bias, because I came away from that with a conscious perception that the vitamin C had cured my cold. So I didn't notice the times when I took vitamin C. I didn't notice those first few days of taking it where I didn't get better yet. I noticed the last day I took it. Wow, that vitamin C really knocked out that cold. So could be a combination of either, not sure. Yes?
So then where's the happy medium? Because then I don't want to buy something that's just full of chemicals. I want something natural.
Where's the happy medium? If you don't want to buy something that's full of chemicals and you want something that's natural, what's the difference? What's not made of chemicals? Can you think of anything that's not made of chemicals? Every chemical has a scary sounding name. No matter what it is, the most beautiful blade of grass you'll find out here. What's that? Dihydrogen monoxide. Dihydrogen monoxide, exactly, the perfect example. You know, I think probably everyone here has seen these things on TV where they'll go out to some hippie rally someplace. Pardon anyone who that offends. You, sir. And they'll have a what do you call it when you're signing your name? A petition, thank you, to ban dihydrogen monoxide. And people go, oh, God, hell, I'll sign that. Yeah, I don't even need to know what it is. And they've got all sorts of great sales pitches that they can tell you about the evil dihydrogen monoxide. It promotes excess urination. It's found throughout our environment. It's in all of our food. It's in all of the water that we drink.
Major component of acid rain.
Major component of acid rain, exactly. These are the things that it's easy to sell. That sounds so scary and it sounds so plausible. What's that? It causes tsunamis. Yeah. That's true. But it does homeopathically cure terrorism. So it does have one thing going for it. So, you know, when you say where do you find the happy medium, there's all sorts of reasons not to buy products that have nothing to do with science. For example, being a vegetarian, I might choose not to eat meat because I don't like to kill animals. That's perfectly valid. That's an ideology that's absolutely valid. You don't have to have science proving that it's healthy to not eat meat. You can do it if you want to. So I say the same thing. If you don't want to go to the doctor when you get sick, fine, you're probably not going to die. The human body has an amazing capacity for self-healing. It's one of the most amazing things that has ever existed in all of science is the capacity of the human body for self-healing. In fact, every drug that we produce, every surgical procedure, it does not heal us. It creates optimal conditions for our body to heal itself. So you're really not too likely to die from any given disease. Until 100 years ago, there was really no such thing as medical science. We had what we thought was medical science, but it did more harm than good as often as not. So I have no problem with people who want to take a ideological or a philosophical perspective of, I don't want to go to McDonald's because I don't like the company. I don't want to eat meat. I don't want to buy big pharma drugs. That's fine. Where it's not fine is when you look for scientific facts, when you try to cherry pick what's out there, when you try to search the internet and find information that supports that view and convince yourself that it's based on good science. Because it's not. There's a difference between science and ideology. Science is facts and figures. You're either right or you're wrong. Ideology, it's fair to be whenever you want to be on the spectrum. So just keep in mind what's science and what's not. That's kind of a good soundbite to end on. Anything else? Not a single question from above. I'm disappointed in the people from above. Where's the camera? Can they see me? Are they here or are they there? They're there. That's wrong with you people. Let's go. I came all the way to your town to do this. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So what goes into making an episode?
What goes into making an episode? Boy. A lot of hard work. I do an episode every week. It's 10 to 12 minutes. There's 1,750 words written. I spend about a week researching and writing each one, simply because they come out every week. I'm usually working on 2 to 4 of them at a time. So I'll just have several in my folder, and I'll work on whichever one is kind of grabs my interest the most, so I'm most motivated whenever I'm sitting down. And I just do a lot of, I start all of my research on the internet, because that's the easiest way. Most of the time, I can get everything I need. I have subscriptions to virtually every scientific journal, so I can look up anything most of the time without having to go to a library in person, because I simply don't have the time to do that. I also rely on great sources are these archives of newspaper articles. There's two in particular that I use that have billions of newspaper articles, so they say, I haven't counted them personally, in every language from hundreds of years. And when you're going over something that happened in the 1600s, you can find a newspaper article about it. It's really something. Actually, that's not true. They didn't have printing back then. So I'm lying. You should have caught me on that. But 200 years ago, you can find newspaper articles about it. And that's amazing, going back to the original sources. I also have a list of a Google group, thank you very much, about 500 people on it now that are scientists in virtually every discipline. And whenever I have a question that I simply can't find the answer to, I will send a question out to this list. I don't use it as often as I wish, because I'm usually out of time and I don't have time to wait for answers. But whenever I do get them, I get great ones. And sometimes I'll take an entire episode. If it's about a medical subject, for example, I'm not a doctor, but I'll write the whole thing first and I'll post the entire transcript up there, and there's probably 200 of these people are doctors, and enough of them will read it and give me feedback, and I'll always end up making changes and fixes. So that's the process. It's just a lot of hard work and a lot of research. My educational background, I went to college for computer science back in the 80s, but I never did anything with it professionally. And I also went to UCLA and USC for writing for film and television, and that's not a job. So I had a job that I didn't take and spent my time on something that wasn't a job. So it wasn't until podcasting came out, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that here's suddenly a perfect confluence of I do all the back-end programming on the website and the podcast myself. So it combined all my interests: general science, computer science, writing for film and television, doing the research. Like many people, as a kid, I had just a great passion for the paranormal. I was reading every book on UFOs and Bigfoots and believing every word of it. So I always had a great interest in that stuff, and so that's kind of where the subject matter came from. But doing the podcast is just it's the perfect job for me. It's doing everything that I love, and it's something that I was doing as a hobby for the first few years. And by the end of this year, I plan to be doing it full time, which is a heck of an accomplishment for a completely independent podcaster. Most of the show's income is donations from listeners. And then there's also advertising on the website. I've got great placement in certain search engines, just because I've done 258 episodes. All of them are about 1,750 words of very good quality. It's all original content. It's very, I don't know if keyword density means anything anymore. I'm sure you guys know more about that than I do. At least I hope so. But they're all really good, relevant articles. And so if you search for 2012 apocalypse, for example, I come up on page 1. That's a hell of an accomplishment. Can I say hell? Right there, because that's a term that there's a lot of competition for. So I have advertising on the site that I'm not doing a very good job of. Anyone feel free to contact me if you work in the AdSense department and tell me what the hell I'm doing wrong. Can I say hell? God, I say that a lot. I said God. I am horrible. Who's in charge of this? Don't you screen these people? Oh, you are.
Excuse me.
There we go.
Hey, I have a question.
I hope you have a question. You're not someone telling us that you need the room now. Go ahead.
I do have a question. So you talk about, of course, myths and sort of misinformation or bad science in pop culture. But what about, aren't there any bright spots, some positive things? In particular, do you see some kind of positive trend about the more sort of science-friendly, science-positive message in some, say, TV shows or anything like that?
Do you need me to repeat the questions for the video, or do you have those? You have those, okay. Do I see any positive trends? No. Well, I mean, there are some. But overall, I think we have a negative trend. The realm of rationality and reason, I think, is going to continue to slide. And the reason I think we're going to continue to lose ground as far as capturing hearts and minds of the general public, is because of the internet and television. It's become so easy to reach so many people with a sensational message. People don't have time to listen to 10 things a day. They have time to listen to one thing a day, and it's whatever's easiest. It's the front page of CNN or it's the first 5 minutes of Oprah. That's where people get their science information. And people want sensational information. They don't care if information is true. They probably care, but they don't know whether information is true or not. They're attracted to sensational information. You may or may not be aware that about 2 years ago, CNN fired its entire science department. CNN no longer has a science bureau. They replaced it with something they call the Empowered Patient Bureau, which is basically alternative medicine. Medicine that either, by definition, has been proven not to work or not proven to work. That's what the empowered patient is, because that's sensational information. It's easy to say, hey, we have a cure for cancer, or here's a new diet that you can try that's going to make you miraculously healthy. That's the information that people want and that they're attracted to. They're not attracted to the dry facts of what's going on. So I think we're going to continue to lose ground for that reason. However, I don't mean to sound gloomy and doomy about that, because I see it as a huge opportunity. Running around talking on our cell phone, making noise. Ha! I can interrupt your phone call too! Ha ha ha! What was going on? Was something burning down? Oh, okay. Any other questions from above? Ooh. I guess not. Yes, sir.
So you interrupted with saying it's a great opportunity, or there are opportunities here. What we can
thank you. You're saying that I interrupted myself. I interrupted myself, thank you, by saying that it's a great opportunity that we have. Because we do. You see, it's... How many people here have listened to my show? Okay, enough of you. And would most of you agree that at least some of them are really interesting and contain information that you haven't heard before? Okay? And it's a lot of work. The best ones are the ones that took the most work. To make fact interesting is a lot harder than to just make up something sensational. And that's why Oprah, et cetera, they just do something sensational. Because that's what gets eyeball share. There's no need to go to the extra work. There's no upside in doing all the extra work to make fact sensational. It's just a lot of extra work. So I work really hard at it, and I think I'm reasonably successful at least, and I hope I become more successful at it, and I hope other people do the same example. Every TV show that's out there, every ghost hunter TV show, if they put in 5 times as much work, their show could present nothing but great information and still be just as fascinating. But it would take that much more work. So, you know, if you're proud of what it is that you do for a living, if you care about whether you're actually providing a service or whether you're just providing entertainment, and I think a lot of people do, I think most people do, then it's very personally fulfilling to put in that extra work and to be proud of what you're doing. That's the way I feel about it. And you know, I do a lot of this talking head stuff where I'll be a little guest expert on some documentary or something like that. And the TV crews that I've worked with, almost to the last person, they all feel the same way. They have no background in science or communicating science. They don't know any better than the shows that they're making, whether the information is true or not. They think it is, they assume it is, they like making it sensational, and they really appreciate good information, but they simply don't have the background to tell what's true, what's fiction from what's nonsense, from what's real. But they do have the interest, and I think most people can be brought around to, you know, with better science education, better appreciation for what's real. I think most people who are in the media can be brought around to doing the extra work because it is more fulfilling, I think. If that makes any sense. Applause, thank you.